The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hey, Father Andrew.
Hello there.
And Pat Scott. Hey, Pat.
Greetings.
Folks, before we get to our show, I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network that I'm sure you'll enjoy. I think there's a big overlap between people who are fans of technology and people who are fans of J.R.R. Tolkien, and therefore you should be listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, which is another one of our shows. And you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found. Just look for Secrets of Middle-earth or go to sqpn.com/Middle-earth. So today, our main topic, we're going to be talking about book tracking services. You know, it's one of those things, the beginning of the year, we all make resolutions. And one of the resolutions, well, some of us make resolutions. I don't. I resolve to not make resolutions. But one of the more popular resolutions I hear from people is, I want to read more books. I want to get more books read this year. And one of the things I do is I do have I keep track of my books, what books I've read and how many I've read, and gamifying my book reading to kind of encourage me to read some of the many books that I buy. And so, and then a friend of ours, a friend of the show, Angela Cialana, one of the hosts of The Secrets of Star Wars, among other things, she was recently looking for a new book tracking service, and she came up with one of the ones that we're going to be talking about. And I said, this is a really good, topic because there are a lot of them. There's quite a number, and they each have different features, which is nice. So different reasons to check them out. But I just want to check with both of you about your book reading habits and book tracking habits. And Pat, what do you do for book reading and tracking? How do you read books mainly? Paper,
well, most
e-book?
of the time I'm reading on a Kindle. Or pardon me, my iPad in the Kindle app. That's the biggest thing. The second one is Audible, and then third is paper books. Yeah. But I just don't carry them around anymore. They sit in the car because I just pick up my Kindle app instead.
Okay. And do you keep track of what you read, or just kind of chaotic?
Well, I've been using Goodreads, and it automatically imports all my Kindle stuff. And I recently went back and realized that my Audibles weren't there, so I went back manually and imported them one at a time. And at that point, now I feel like most of my reading is in there, but I'm not a tracker in terms of looking at seeing how many I did or a goal. What I usually use it for is recommendations from others. You know, I'm going out there and finding other people that I trust their judgment, and enjoy, has similar types of interests, and get recommendations for new books for that.
Okay. How about you, Father?
I prefer the physical. You can see behind me.
Just a few.
just a few. My bookshelves are behind me, but for me it's been really challenging. I think really since seminary, and then even like with the last 2 years being back in graduate studies, it's been just difficult to read for fun. And so I'm still sort of in this spot where I want to read, but it's just not happening yet because I'm feeling a bit of the backlash of all the reading that I had to do in graduate studies. But definitely when it comes to books, fiction, the fun reading, I much prefer the physical. And but there's a lot of especially with graduate studies or other sorts of reading. I do use the Kindle app on my iPad, and I do have a Kindle that I definitely I plan to take with me on vacation next month and really just sit and read. So I sort of feel like the Kindle device is going to be where I spend the most of my time going forward reading. But when it comes to like PDFs and those sorts of things, and I've noticed a few, there's like, I like to get some of the art books, like the art of, like Across the Spider-Verse, or, those sorts of things. Those are on Kindle, but they are full color on an iPad. So the Kindle app on the iPad is much better to use than the Kindle itself. So I want to, and I have done a lot of reading, but I'm kind of in between all of them at the moment.
I'd say I'm 99% Kindle reading, Kindle Paperwhite. I use it for most things. Although I agree, there are a lot of, especially nonfiction books where there are charts and illustrations and stuff, where I want bigger, clearer screen and color. And so sometimes I'll actually have my my phone out to look at charts while I'm reading the book on my Kindle. That sort of thing, side by side. But I do occasionally, very rarely, read a paper book, but usually it's a special book. Like I think I read most recent like paperback book or hardcover book I read was the Baron and Luthien, which was a Tolkien. Speaking of Tolkien, Tolkien book, and it was the Fall of Gondolin. That was the most recent one I read, and it was like, oh yeah, I have to read Tolkien on paper. It's just the way I started and the way it will be.
Preferably parchment.
Yes.
I had a professor in seminary who liked to say books are incarnational, and and he meant they're physical and they're corporeal, and so there was something about like he was kind of on a rant against all the ebooks and all that stuff, but which I very much appreciate. But the ebooks, I mean, are so wonderful, and I mean, heck, I fall into the realm of probably I've collected too many physical books anyway, so I probably should just stick with
Dom and I have the same problem. Shelves behind me.
Well, you're not seeing my stuff downstairs.
Exactly. But we're one good EMP away from being happy we still have paper books.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to discussion of how do we track our book reading. And, you mentioned, Pat, Goodreads. That's by far the biggest. And, of course, it's owned by Amazon. Goodreads started independent, was bought by Amazon several years ago, which makes sense because it's, it's a funnel. It's really a funnel for Amazon to sell more books, which makes sense. I get that. It makes it so easy to log your books that you've bought from Amazon. You can go in and tell it to suck down, connect your accounts and suck down everything that was in your Amazon account. When you're reading in the Kindle app or on a Kindle device, it automatically logs it in the in Goodreads for you if you want. And then there's, as you mentioned, you can write reviews, you can read reviews, you can connect with friends. And it's a great way to stay with other people. And I've actually found books based on what friends have read, and it's always fun. And you have reading lists. You can see your friends' lists. One of the big things for me is the annual book challenge. You can set yourself a goal, however many books you want to read in the next year. Mine for the past few years has been 35 books, but I'm reading a Brandon Sanderson book right now, and I'm already behind.
It's a little bit large.
Yes, he doesn't know when to stop writing. This is the opposite George R.R. Martin problem. Those are its strengths, but it's got ads, and it can feel a little, like
commercial,
pushy like that, but it's free. So that's a big benefit. So they're the 800-pound gorilla in this space. Just throw that out there. Most people are probably familiar with them if they are using book tracking. But there's some others out there. When I started researching this, I found some interesting ones. And there's another one called Fable. Now, it's less data-driven than Goodreads. Fable is more about reading communities. So it's more about the social aspect and having book clubs and discussion groups and that sort of thing. It does have some features that are behind a paywall, though. And in fact, several of these other alternatives do have like freemium models where they give you some part for free and some advanced features are behind a paywall. So it also lets you log books you've read and track your reading progress. So you can track it within the book as well as books that you've read. And you can set yourself some milestones and goals. You can join or create book clubs. You can, they also have like curated discussions, led by others, guided by questions and prompts. So if you want to turn your reading into more of an activity, an intellectual activity, get more into your books, this would be a nice place, I think, for that. They promote mindful reading and reading goals, and there's an interactive reading journal and that sort of thing. They also have almost all of these I mentioned are going to have apps as well that are available cross-platform, iOS, Android, that sort of thing. So that's Fable. I mean, what do you think? Are you interested in communities and groups and that sort of social aspect of reading? Does any of that seem attractive to either of you? Is that the sort of thing you'd like?
Well, I know a lot of people that are that I know online really like book clubs that are online, and there's several places they hang out. Some of it's in Facebook groups, some of it's over in VR under book, some book reading groups in there. But and then I have a few people that actually have real physical people that go, they are in a book club with, but that's less and less these days because we're migratory people. But for me, that doesn't have a lot of appeal for me, although I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And sometimes I think maybe I might get more out of a book if I were doing it with a group, but I don't have the time. Mm-hmm. That's really my issue.
Yeah. And for me, it's, I like the idea behind it because I love talking about my favorite books, but I dislike the pressure that I feel like if I am not keeping up or I get busy and then I'm behind. And so I like to read and not feel like I'm being forced to read just so that I can participate in a discussion. But I think for a lot of people, especially, with the internet, you can get some really cool kind of niche sort of like, groups on, some obscure book series that nobody in my small town of, 2,000 people has ever read, but I can connect with all sorts of people who have read it and talk about it. So There's some great things there, but I'm the introvert in me just wants to like curl up in a cave and read and not necessarily have to
Sometimes I like to be the lurker in those groups. Just like, I don't want to say anything, but I want to see what other people say. I belong to a few book focused Facebook groups.
Right.
And actually often like focused around a particular author or very small, narrow genre.
Or I'm usually book. Just that whole group is about one book.
Yeah, exactly. I've been in one author.
One of those. Yeah.
And so, but I usually lurk. I'm not usually a participant in that sort of thing, but I'm just saying I find it interesting. And the groups usually go far afield of, things that they seem related to the book or the author. Mm-hmm. But I get the idea that creating a community around reading. I can see the attraction. Mm-hmm. All right, so another one is StoryGraph or the StoryGraph. That's how their brand, and their big thing, that sets them apart, I think, is privacy. Whereas Goodreads, Amazon knows everything that you're doing there. The StoryGraph is much more private and less about community, but more about statistics and personalized recommendations. There's a part of it where mood is a huge aspect, apparently. Like, so when they say StoryGraph, it really tells you what it's about. They're really using data and metadata to catalog the books and to kind of differentiate them, and then use that data to help you find new books. So create one of the things is mood-based book recommendations. So adventurous, emotional, dark. I'm not sure I approach books in that fashion, but for some people that may be how they would want to. It differentiate whether the pacing, is it fast paced, it's slow paced, the genres, obviously, the book lengths, and there's lots of charts and graphs and all kinds of stuff like that. And then they also have they use this data and your history of reading to create personalized book recommendations. So, based on the types of books that you enjoy, here's some other authors and books that you might enjoy. I like the idea of that. So it's kind of interesting. But they also do like mood-based tracking. So, tracking the types of books that you read based on their mood and what it says about you and that sort of fun stuff. They too have a freemium model where they have some features like some more advanced statistics and more tailored recommendations behind a paywall, but very minimal focus on social features. But what do you think of a statistical or data-driven approach? I mean, it's kind of interesting how each of these services, they really kind of cater to particular personalities, the extrovert who wants to be in a community, the numbers nerd who wants the data, that sort of thing. What do you think of a data-driven approach?
Well, it's almost like somebody trying to submit all of your stuff to an AI and say, okay, now based upon this.
No, that would be interesting.
But it's not an AI, but that would that's the next connection I see.
Yeah, I can see one of these services, hooking up an AI to your book list and letting the AI, give you recommendations. That's kind of interesting.
For me, I think it would be just a little too much. It's like when you have your watch tracker, and it's just, I mean, it's almost too much, and then you lose the enjoyment of just going out for a run or something. I would get way too, boggled down by the numbers and the statistics and stuff. I do think the mood thing is interesting though. If you're just, wanting to stay in an adventurous mood and kind of following that path, I think that could lead to some really great discoveries of books you've never found before.
That's
right,
true.
or things that you're looking for, joyful or hopeful or inspirational, that type of thing. That I can see that.
Or if someone is going through a tough time, you can recommend a bunch of
grief.
I think of. Do you remember the Chicken Soup for the Soul books?
Yep.
Yeah.
Something like that. If you're in the mood for something like that, you could kind of find those similar books.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that idea. So minimal social features, more data driven. Now the next one is called Bookworm. It's worm, WYRM, sort of like the old
medieval
word for dragon. And this is interesting because it's open source and decentralized, so it's not owned by anyone, and it works through the Fediverse. If you've heard of that, Mastodon is another one. Is another federated service. And so what you have is servers. Someone sets up a server running the Bookworm software, and that server is focused on a particular community, whether it's sci-fi. You could have like a Catholic sci-fi server or very niche communities. And it's ad free, which is, clearly it's open source, and it's privacy focused. Again, no big data company owns it or has access to the information. So it's whoever owns that server has the data, but that's about it. And they use a community curated open library, because all of these have to have libraries that you list your books from, and so the bigger services like Amazon will have more books in the library, but they have an open library system where if your book's not in, you can add to it, which is nice. But this is very much community focused, but it's community and autonomy. That idea of we're not beholden to holding some other company. We're our own thing, sort of the free spirit, the commune of the book communities. And each server can have its own rules, that sort of thing for how things are run. And some servers will be the Wild West, and others will be very locked down.
Controlled.
And that sort of thing. So I know certain people who this would definitely appeal to. I love
the name. Just why it sounds very fantasy oriented.
It probably is. I'm going to say
it. And it reminds me of Discord, but for books.
Yeah.
You have your own kind of server, and I mean, it just sounds to me like it would appeal more towards the, I don't quite know how to phrase it, but the higher tech kind of people, like
the Linuxy folks.
The ones who are really, because for me, it sounds like it would be, now if I could join a server that was already created, that would be fine. But like to create your own server and stuff is a little bit out of my desire. Out of my desire to do.
And apparently, even using it as opposed to creating your own server, but even just using it there's a little bit of a learning curve. It's a lot
like Discord.
Yeah, it's a little bit of trying to figure out how it works. And speaking of Discord, just as a FYI, our Discord server, the sqpn.com/Discord, we have a book channel there where we have lots of great book talk, and that's a nice place. We don't track our books there, but there's lots of book talk there and book recommendations that go on, and that is a very niche community of like-minded folks. So you always get good recommendations there.
Now, on the Bookworm, for instance, if I have not used it before and I created an account and logged in, do I have access to a group of books from all of the people, or is it just people that I know type thing again?
That's a good question. So,
because it's privacy oriented, so I kind of wondered, how much that means that you can't share with you can't see the big picture.
You can't just see everybody's books, but people will share books. So so people will write a review, and you'll see those reviews on your server, and you see what's on your server. You can also see what's not on your server, because it's federated. And then there are communal areas for getting together and communicating and talking about books as well. And so you see all of that. So I think you can only see what people let you see, what you reveal, that sort of thing. So you can track your reading and put all your books in there, but you're not necessarily showing it to everyone.
Right, but the discussion on maybe rating the books, that might be more open.
Yes. There are reviews, and those are available to be read by anyone on the server and that sort of thing. So yes, definitely that. And then we have another one, which is Library Thing, which Library Thing is interesting because they've been around a long time. I remember them from way back, and they started. And they're primarily focused on book organizing, and they started as a way to organize your physical books
with a scanner.
Yes, you can get a little scanner and scan the barcodes. And man, I've started scanning projects. I don't know how many times trying to scan my books, and I get about a couple hundred books in, and then I lose interest and I wander away. I get overwhelmed. But they've really expanded a bit, and now they are much more focused. Not more focused, but they have more communal aspects. There's group discussions, shared libraries. So there's more of those sorts of features available in it. And because it's so focused on cataloging and organization, they have lots of books. Lots of people have uploaded their libraries into the system. And so there's lots of user contributed data, metadata, and tags for books, group discussions. You can import and export your data really easily. There's not a lot of social stuff, but there's some. It's not really social is not really its thing. It's more about organization, and it's free. But there's also an option to pay $25 for a lifetime, thing, and you get access to all kinds of you get premium features. That again, there's a paywall. But, even the free version is plenty for most people. I still remember an app on the Mac years ago called Delicious Library, which was a cataloging app. And it actually created a whole aesthetic that ruled Mac software for many years called the Delicious Generation. It was just this skeuomorphic styling where things looked like what they pretended to be. Like it looked like bookshelves, and so you put you every time you scanned a book in, it added to a bookshelf. And I remember using that. It eventually went away. It was just too bad because it was nice software. But Library Thing is kind of like that. So
I did look to see, and all of the ones that we've talked about so far, you can import your stuff from Goodreads, and things will let you export from there to another service. So it might be fun to try to export your stuff into one of the others and play with it and see if it has more features that you like.
Right. And you don't have to use an external service either. If you just want to track your book reading, you could use a spreadsheet, like a Google sheet or a Excel sheet. I mean,
or a piece of paper.
Yeah. There are people who use, they have journals. They have paper journals that they use to track theirs.
Or like a card system, like the library, have one for each book.
The cards. Oh man, the card catalogs. So I worked in a library when I was in high school, the Canton Public Library, Canton, Massachusetts. And I worked there, and I can tell you, I still have the, muscle memory of pulling the the drawer out of the catalog and then pulling that central rod out so that I could file new cards. It was just, I did thousands of cards, and it's just muscle memory still from 40 years ago. Gosh.
Well, I don't have the one of stocking them, but I sure have the one of being in the libraries and going through and pulling books and doing a lot of research.
Going through those cards, looking for that Library of Congress number.
I want to talk about Library Thing just a little bit, because Library Thing is in fact, I recommended this as a pick of the week years ago.
That's right.
Oh,
now I remember.
Right. Yeah.
So, and what I like about it, because what I want more than the social or the statistics is, I want to know what my library is, and
what you've already read.
Well, and what's great about it more is and it's happened to me not so much recently, but I remember being at the bookstore and thinking, shoot, do I have this book or not? And then being able to pull up
whatever you got. Yeah.
Pull up my library on my phone and say, yep, I've already got it. Or no, it's a new one. I need it. But a couple of really cool things about Library Thing. It catalogs your books, and you can organize them into whatever collections you want, which is good for me because I can have my Catholic theology books separate from my Star Wars books and so forth. But a friend of mine really likes to organize his library by the Library of Congress numbers. And so Library Thing gives you those numbers. So
ISBN.
Yep. Well, no, it's not the
Library
ISBN,
of
it's the
Congress,
Library of Congress. So that's kind of cool. And one of the other really cool things is if you connect it, Library Thing has a connected app called TinyCat. So it stands for, I think, Tiny Catalog, but it's free for personal use, but it'll upload your library into TinyCat, and then it works like a little library. You can share that with your friends, and if you lend a book, they can request to lend it, and you can have in that app, who's got what book and when they checked it out, and what date they returned it. So if you're into sharing your books and forget who has what book, this is a really cool way to keep track of.
Oh, that's cool.
Who's in your lending library. So lots of cool stuff with the Library Thing.
Very nice. Very nice. So, one additional one I want to mention is something that I've been doing in addition to Goodreads is, I'm going to mention it again, Obsidian. Okay, everybody drink. So Obsidian, that awesome tool that does so many different things. It's a cross-platform text-based tool. But this guy has developed this tool using some plugins for Obsidian to track books and reading. I'll link to a blog post he wrote about it, this Aaron Young, and it uses some plugins to grab the metadata for books from online sources. And so you just using a few keystrokes, you can create a hyperlinked books record on your computer. So I have in my personal Obsidian vault, a page called My Bookshelf, and then it has a list of books in progress, books I've read, books that are unread. And when I click through to the individual book, it tells me when did I buy it, when did I read it. And then because all this is in there, I can also do things like all the books I've read in 2024 or that sort of thing. And it grabs the cover art and the other metadata and throws it in there for me. So if you just want something that lives on your computer, is your data, doesn't go out to any server anywhere, even the Fediverse. This would be another way to do it using Obsidian, and it's relatively easy to set up. Follow directions, and if you have any bit of handiness with tech, which you probably do if you listen to the show, you can even modify how it works a bit if you want. And so I really enjoy that. I've modified it so that I have a what to read next list. So because that's always like a big thing for me is I've always got like more than one book I could read next, like books I bought that I haven't read or books that I'm planning to check out from the library or whatever. But I want to remember them. And so I have a list of what to read next, but I also list of books I've pre-ordered and the date that they're going to come out so that I have an understanding of my future reading there. So, and then you could do things like take notes on the Obsidian page for each individual book. Sometimes I want to take notes about stuff I've been reading in it, especially nonfiction books, that sort of stuff. So it's excellent. And because it's hyperlinked, there's lots of ways to connect things. So if you're reading a bunch of books on a particular subject for a project of some sort, you can hyperlink between the different books and say, in this note, this guy says here, but in this other book, and you could hyperlink to things. So it's really nice tool for that.
Cool.
So I think that covers a lot. I mean, there were more book tracking, book reading services and sites out there. These were the big ones, but there are many people on the internet apparently are readers. I mean, the statistics have been saying that fewer people are reading these days, but there's still a lot of readers out there, and we need to encourage more reading because reading is, as they say, fundamental. We need to
and fun.
And fun. Reading is also fun. So book tracking. Excellent. So anything else to say about this? Did we cover everything? If not, we'll move on to our next part of our show, which before we do, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of technology, including Russell T., Joe S., Charlene C., Charles M., and Les. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of technology and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. This StarQuest show is also brought to you by Exodus 90 and the Exodus 90 Challenge, which begins this year on January 20th. This isn't just a 90-day program. Exodus 90 is a spirituality for men in modern times, built on 3 ancient pillars: prayer, self-sacrifice, and fraternity. We all long for something more, and that something is to be found in becoming the men that God created us to be, sons of a loving Father. It's time to turn away from our idols. It's time to break free from the pharaohs that hold us in bondage. If you're ready to make a fresh start, to break free, refocus, and rediscover who God is calling you to be in the new year, and embark on a journey to uncommon freedom in Jesus Christ, then download the Exodus 90 app today. We start January 20th, 2025, so go to exodus90.com/SQPN to learn more about Exodus 90. That's exodus90.com/SQPN. So we have some headlines, and the first one, man, this one's right up our alley. This is a Secrets of Tech headline if I ever read one. Logging off life but living on, how AI is redefining death, memory, and immortality. This was at the, where was it? The Conversation is the website. And it talks about all the many different ways that death and our digital life are intertwined. And we've talked about digital legacies and that sort of thing on this show before, digital memento mori, and, dealing with the stuff of, your accounts after you die. But there was an aspect of this that really caught my attention, which is the idea that we're approaching a time when someone could create an AI avatar of us, of you when you die, and feed it all the social media, all your any videos you've been in, all your text messages, everything about you into an AI, and have it recreate something that they could have ongoing conversations with, and as if you were still there. And on the one hand, at first blush, that seems like, oh, that would be so much of a comfort. I wish I could talk to my mom still, or my dad still, not having them around. And every time I hear I have saved recorded voice messages from them, it makes me tear up. On the other hand, it could be problematic as well. What do you all think of this idea of creating AI avatars of ourselves after, or of loved ones after they die?
I think it's weird. Go ahead, Pat.
I was just going to say, I've read so many books where this is the theme, where in fact, people that have had the same office for years, maybe they have all the previous occupants of that particular position. They've got all their memories and they can go back and play them back, etc. And it sounds cool, but from a personal level, you haven't let them go. You haven't resolved things. It's an artificial. And so I would hate to see that become the standard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of the current kind of, the science fiction books and stuff that I've been reading, this is like the next step. Ready Player 2 even kind of deals with this, if you've read that book. And it's like, the next step in human evolution is to upload our brains to a computer. And of course, sci-fi is putting it like that's where you'll live in immortality. This is a little bit different in that an AI is sort of recreating new conversations based on your own personal data and videos and whatnot. And I think it's fundamentally different than having videos of someone who's passed away or a voicemail, or because those are real things, real memories, versus an extrapolation and a whole new conversation that's not actually from the person at all. It's just an algorithm that's sort of created it. So I agree with you, Pat. I think, having the memories and the videos and the photos and stuff is crucial in our grief process and letting go. But we also have to let go as well. And I think, there's people out there who, some people are marrying inanimate objects. How many would recreate their spouse and then sort of
forgo life?
Right. Or sort of forget that their spouse is deceased and sort of go on living as if the AI is not just an AI, but it's really their spouse. And that's not a healthy way to deal with death and grief and all of that. I think it's an interesting and it could be a really fun sort of tool, but I guess when it comes to, I don't like the idea of using it to preserve a loved one after death. I think it would be kind of fun to play around with it as you're like upload your own videos as you're still, living, and then sort of see like, is the AI correctly going to say what I would say in this situation? That's a different situation. Death, is so fundamental and personal. And of course, with our faith, we know that death isn't the end, but earth isn't the end, and so if you try to hold on to something this side of eternity, it's just, there's all sorts of problems and issues.
Well, and I think that the attempt to do this is sometimes maybe a reflection of the lack of faith, a lack of understanding of what we believe. They figured this is the way we can create that without having to deal with God.
Even the article that talks about a digital afterlife as if it's a real afterlife. That person is gone. That you're not creating an afterlife for that person. And one of the problematic aspects of this is, what about the dignity of that person who's gone? I don't want someone to create a fake version of me and relate to it as if it was me after I'm gone. I don't want it saying things in my voice. Yeah. Like, and who owns that now? That version of me that is saying things perhaps in public, or, you know what I mean? I think it's highly problematic, and it's potentially an offense against the dignity of the human person to attempt this. I'm sure it's well intentioned on the part of those who are grieving, but I agree, it's certainly not healthy. And I think there's like, I've mentioned before, I created a virtual Jimmy Akin in ChatGPT where you can do create a virtual avatar, where I sold it to, ingest all of the things Jimmy has publicly written and said that's available on the internet, and then answer as if you're Jimmy Akin. And I did this as an experiment. I would never put this out there because Jimmy's, it's Jimmy's.
Yes.
You know what I mean? This is, he has the right to be his own person without other people, putting versions out there. But I created this as a sort of an experiment. Like, could you do this with someone who's got enough information in the public sphere? And I was familiar with enough with Jimmy that I could test it. And it's really good. It actually, Catholic Answer should have used this instead of Father Justin.
Father Justin.
Yeah, this would have worked much better. Because it actually gives the correct answers to all of those questions that Father Justin AI got wrong, which is kind of funny. But I would never put this out there for other people to use, because that's an offense against Jimmy's dignity, as a person. And so, I agree, Pat. I think this is evidence of the lack of faith that we see out there. I don't know if it's lack of faith, but a lack of an understanding of the true reality of the world we live in, the spiritual realities of the world we live in. Actually, the article I linked mentions the Vatican as having talked about digital legacies should always respect human dignity. But unfortunately, the article they linked to doesn't actually talk about digital legacies. That's what how they refer in the article refers to these, whatever it is we leave behind, sort of thing. It actually just talks about respecting human dignity in the online sphere in general. But I think actually it would be nice if the church specifically continued to address these topics.
Yeah, I found it interesting, too, after having seen what we were going to be doing. I went out and did a little bit more of, how the Chinese approach it, how the Japanese approach it, how the Koreans approach it, and various different. And it's interesting that some of them are, it fits right in their philosophy.
Right.
And then the Buddhists say no part of it because there's no way that reflects anything about our beliefs. It's really kind of interesting to see that break, that difference between the different faiths.
Interesting. So I want to move on to another headline. Speaking of China, we are approaching the January 19th deadline for TikTok, which the U.S. Government has passed a law banning TikTok in the United States. It's banning the download of the app. But TikTok is basically saying, if you can't download the app, we're going to just turn it off for American users. So it's looking more and more like that's going to happen. One of the things I saw was very interesting possibility. If this ever happened, it'd be really funny, I think, which is Bloomberg is reporting China weighs sale of TikTok US to Elon Musk as a possible option, which would be the funniest outcome, I think, of this.
I don't like him very much.
I mean, I like him fine. I meant China.
He had some clashes with him.
Right, exactly. And apparently the Chinese government would prefer that ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok, to retain ownership, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Well, isn't or do I have this wrong in my head? Wasn't the law that it's going to be banned unless TikTok is owned in America versus China?
Right. They have to split off the American operations from the Chinese ownership.
Yep.
And have American servers under American control and completely separate from control of the Chinese company in because in case folks are aware, it's not so much that China will use TikTok to influence Americans using it. It's because the Chinese government, the communist Chinese government, by law has access to all of those servers in China, all of ByteDance, so they can access all of that data and use it, and can influence the development of the apps, which is why for a long time now, not just even long before this law was passed, many government agencies forbid employees from having TikTok on their phones or from anyone in their household in some cases.
Oh, wow.
Like the CIA required that all employees, no one in their household could have the app on their phone because of the fears that they could sneak in monitoring software and software that could manipulate and access other data on the phone. This isn't pie in the sky. Facebook was found to be doing something like this a number of years ago in their own app. They were doing some tricks where it left the microphone active on your phone, and so that they could record things. And they claim, it was just an error, a mistake. This was back when, remember, when you have the Facebook app, your phone's battery would die very quickly after using the app for some strange reason. Well, they found out because it was leaving the microphone on. So I kind of wish they got smacked harder for that. They did. Yeah. So it's not just also the Chinese government, but I'm more worried about what the communist Chinese government could do than I am with what Facebook could do with this data, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, it is kind of interesting that they would contemplate basically selling U.S. operations to X, formerly Twitter, and have them run it basically because of Elon Musk's reputation now for being a free speech firebrand and advocate. And he's
done really well with X. I've been surprised. I mean, I remember when he bought X and fired, I forget, 80% of the employees, or some huge number, and it's grown in popularity in a lot of circles. And I appreciate the free speech push that he does too. Right.
Yeah. I've seen some people I don't want, Zuckerberg or Elon Musk to have access to my data. But they didn't have any problem. They don't have any problem with TikTok and the Chinese government having access to your data. I've also seen some of the TikTok users are moving not to Instagram Reels, not to this other Chinese app called Red Tomato, Red something or other. I forget what it's like. Red some sort of vegetable or fruit. And I'm like, okay, that's not better. Why are you insistent on giving your data to the Chinese government? I don't understand. Maybe listeners can let us know. But I think I mainly picked this headline just because I think that would be the funniest outcome of all the possible outcomes. And speaking of funny outcomes, our third headline, the headline says, L.A. man nearly misses flight as self-driving Waymo taxi drives around parking lot in circles. I've been in taxis that drove around in circles at the airport, but this was different.
You couldn't get out.
Look, it's Big Ben Parliament. I immediately thought when I saw this. If anyone has seen European Vacation, you know what I mean. So this guy was heading home from Scottsdale, Arizona, back in December, and he hopped in a Waymo, which is a self-driving taxi, to go to the airport. But when he got there, it wouldn't stop. He just kept driving around and around. And he had to call Waymo to try to get somebody to help him. I'm like, I'm getting dizzy, he says in the video. It's circling around a parking lot. I got my seatbelt on. I can't get out of the car. Have I been hacked? What's going on? So they finally were able to get the car under control remotely, which allowed him to get out of the car and get to his plane in time to get back to LA.
And they said it was a bug that they fixed later. Yeah. So
it's kind of, this is, is it par for the course as we move toward a future of self-driving cars, or is this a fundamental issue that would say maybe we shouldn't be doing this? What do you guys think?
I think it's, I think that eventually they'll get most of these things solved and fixed. I would hate to see it kill the idea of self-driving cars, because I think there's times where a very safe version of that would be extremely helpful, But I thought of it today as I was turning the corner and a Waymo came past me, spinning its little thing on the top and on the side. And
I was thinking of what was the Schwarzenegger movie where he had to get to Mars?
Total Recall.
Total Recall. Remember the Johnny Cab?
Yeah.
Thanks for driving Johnny Cab. Sorry, Gen X moments here.
It's okay.
What do you think, Father?
I don't know if I trust technology quite with driving. I don't know if I ever. I mean, I think maybe. I don't know. I hear there's still way too many horror stories and crashes and stuff, and even like if we solved all those things, I still want someone like in the driver's seat, even if it's all automated, something to just kind of watch. I mean, even isn't that more or less? I mean, even airplanes, a lot of that is kind of just almost self-guided, or but there's still the pilot that's making sure everything's good. I mean, this is kind of a funny article. Thankfully, nobody got hurt, but there's just too many things that could go wrong when you're driving at those kind of speeds that I'm not trusting that yet.
5,000-pound missile traveling at 60 miles an hour. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
On the other hand, I have this gut feeling that seeing a lot of the drivers on the road, I think that robots are a lot safer. I mean, yeah, there may be dramatic failures, and those would be horrible. But the little things of, I think they're going to be safer than the average person out there I see on the freeway.
I think in the long run, we're probably going to be better off.
Now, maybe if they were on a rail where they could never run into each other, maybe that would be helpful. The old things where they were on a monorail.
Yep.
That sounds more helpful.
Or like in Skeleton Crew in Star Wars, where they're apparently on AT-AT and they're all apparently all along a guide rail or something like that on the streets.
I just want one of their hover bikes. And
hover bikes are cool. Again, human in control, going wherever they want to go.
Right.
Excellent. So, Waymo, no go. And those are our headlines. Let's move on to our picks of the week. And Pat, you're up first this week. What is your pick?
Surprise, I've got another Anchor product that I'm touting. For Christmas, I was able to give several of my family the little portable. I've got a very, very small Anchor power bank that I keep in my purse all the time to charge up my phone if I get a especially busy day. And this one is a little bit bigger, but it has the cord that's already connected and an additional port, and it plugs into the wall with that. So you don't have to worry about carrying around a plug for it. And I just found it very self-contained, and there's one that has a built-in lightning cord and the other one that has a built-in USB-C cord, which of course that's the way everything's going, and as well as an additional port that you could plug something else in. And I just found they were very small, very easy to carry around, and very compact, and you didn't have to carry other cords and accessories with them.
Very nice. Very nice. The battery packs are just as a gift. I mean, so great. I have all of my battery packs that I had on my desk have all disappeared because all of my children have absconded with them at one point or another. So I've had to go out and buy new ones, which I'm not sad about because the newer ones are cool and better. And I have a future pick of the week is one of the new Anchor battery packs that they've released at CES. That's really cool. So I'll tease you on that. But this one this one you mentioned here is really nice. It's 10,000 milliamp hours, which is several charges for most phones these days. And it's really nice.
And it's only like, between $35 and $45, depending upon whether you want black and white in color or black or white, or whether you want USB-C or lightning.
I will say, stick with the name brands on anything battery related. Do not.
Well, that's why I say Anchor, because I've used them for years and trust it.
Yes, exactly. The corner store battery packs are probably not good unless they are name brand. But like the weird all capitals 6 random letters name batteries on Amazon, probably stay away from those. Those are not. I wouldn't say they were safe. But this is definitely good. Excellent. Father Andrew, what's your pick this week?
So my pick is, everybody who listens probably already knows that I'm a gamer. and I like music. So Nintendo, kind of in their normal vein of doing things differently, they released a Nintendo Music app. So think of it as basically Spotify, but for strictly Nintendo game music. So it's free with a Nintendo Switch Online membership. So it is $20 a year. But if you already have a Nintendo Switch Online membership, you have complete access to the music app, and it's for Android or Apple, and you download it and it works. I mean, yeah, just like Spotify, they're slowly adding more game music to it all the time, but they've got a lot of the big recent games on it, and they've got kind of created playlists or kind of themed playlists. You can download music to listen offline. So if you're at all interested in listening to Nintendo game music, there's a lot on there. But I wish they would release all the music they have, because I mean they're slowly ramping up in what they're releasing, and I think they could release a lot more music. Because especially all the older games. I don't know if they're sort of holding back on how quickly they release some of the older game music, but there's still a lot of good ones on there right now, and more is being added every month. So
I just don't think of game music as being a niche listening thing, but I guess I'm just not that much of a gamer.
I would argue that there's a couple aspects. One, like all the Nintendo, the original Nintendo and Super Nintendo is more, there's a nostalgia kick there for those of us who grew up with it. But the newer games, I mean, they have full symphonies that have done music, and I mean, it's worth a concert just to hear the music in its own right. I mean, like I'm thinking even of the Halo music. I mean, there's a full blown concert and even a full choir as they're doing some of the chants. And it's amazing. It's no longer sort of just your tinny kind of, old school kind of music. But then even there's some modern games that have purposely gone retro in how they've designed it. And even the music has gone retro. But it's it's a modern game done in a retro style. And some of the music that they come up with, I mean, even on a 16-bit sort of sound, is really cool. So, wow. I think there's more there for even the non-gamer fan than most people realize.
My wife Melanie was telling me about this composer that she's found, this modern composer who's does some really amazing, innovative stuff and stuff incorporating poetry into his compositions. And then turns out he was the composer for the music for Civilization 6, one of my favorite games, which has some amazing music in it. And, there's the main score, but then there's the music for each of the civilizations within it. And it is really amazing. It is to the level now of movie soundtracks. It's like, wow. So, you can just think of it like movie soundtracks. If you enjoy movie soundtracks, people will enjoy game soundtracks as well. So,
on that note, not that I want to get too off topic, but David W. Collins, he's done some voices in Star Wars, but he's really big into sound and music. He has a podcast out there called The Soundtrack Show, and he talks about even Mario, the original Mario music, and even like the original Legend of Zelda music. He talks about how Koji Kondo had to compose like the original Mario music in such a way that was using the sounds that the Nintendo system could produce. Right. So he was limited in what sounds he could make, but he had to like incorporate that into kind of telling a story in the music. And I mean, it's phenomenal. If you want to really get into some of the nerdy kind of sound stuff, check out The Soundtrack Show. And I mean, it'll make you appreciate just that simple Mario melody a heck of a lot more than you ever realized.
I have it going in my head right now.
Yeah.
Excellent. So my pick this week is something I came across that's really cool. I don't have it yet because it's sold out. Its first run sold out very quickly, and they're quickly getting some more. But it's from a company called Elevation Lab, which has done a lot of really innovative products for air tags. They have air tags that are really hardened for, like, you could put on outdoor gear, stuff for your luggage that's really good on fabric. Well, this is one, it's called the 10-year battery case, the time capsule 10-year battery case for your air tag. And the way it works is you take the air tag, you take the back cover off, and you take the battery out, and then you put this inside this case, which then screws shut with these big, heavy screws on the sides. And so it looks like it's about the size of a cell phone, but thicker, of a modern, smartphone, but thicker. And it takes 2 AA batteries. This case does. And they recommend Energizer lithium batteries that can last for up to 25 years. And what this does is it extends the battery life of an AirTag to what do they say, like 10 years. Like it could make your AirTag last for 10 years, which anybody who owns AirTags knows that that they last pretty good amount of time, especially if you get a decent battery to start with. You have to get the right batteries. But when a battery dies and you haven't found the AirTag to replace it before it died, that AirTag could be gone if you don't know where it is. Like if as an example, I put AirTags in my daughter's handbag in her backpack, and I've been meaning to replace the one in her handbag for a while. And I finally went to her and I'm like, where's the AirTag? And she's like, it's not in here. It's somewhere in her room somewhere. And it may as well be gone because the battery.
It'll never come back.
Someday we'll be moving out and we'll find it. But in this case, I mean, it's not as small and convenient and compact.
That would be worrying me. Is it's big? Yeah.
Well, this is the way they put it is they designed this after they lost $10,000 worth of, or had $10,000 worth of gear stolen, camera gear, and the Find My didn't work because the AirTag battery had died. So, if you have a case full of expensive equipment that it stores on a shelf, and then you take it with you on a trip, like that sort of, that sort of idea. And you want to make sure that you put it in the trunk of a car, or put it in a toolbox in your truck, or lots of different places where you have an AirTag. It's not right there on your desk, but it's like it's not convenient, and having to change a battery on a regular basis would be inconvenient. This is 10 years this thing will last. The AirTag will probably die before the battery does. And it's only $20 for this case.
Really?
Wow. Is pretty darn reasonable. You can get 2 packs and a 4-pack for $40. So that's $10 a case. It's no wonder it's sold out, because this is a brilliant idea, I think. So it's from Elevation Lab. We'll have a link in the show notes to all of our picks. And then check out their other ones, because if you use AirTags, you'll find other AirTags cases that they have that you'll want. I'm going to Rome this summer on our pilgrimage, our StarQuest pilgrimage, and I'm getting one of the fabric ones for our luggage, that sort of thing. So it's going to be great. So that does it for our picks of the week and our show. We'd love to get your feedback on anything we talked about this time. You can let us know by commenting in the show at sqpn.com/technology, or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to technology@sqpn.com, or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. You'll find links from our discussion and our picks of the week on our show notes at starquest.fm/TEC284. Be sure to write a review in Apple Podcasts or one of the podcast directories. You can't write reviews in Goodreads, though. That's not a podcast. But anywhere else you can write a review of podcast, do that. And share the podcast with your friends to help us grow this community and reach more listeners. Until next time, Pat Scott, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Okay. Bye.
Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you as well.
Always a pleasure.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.